Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday night. It is time for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. And I think we're kind of still having a little bit of WrestleMania hangover or withdrawal going on because it's kind of a quiet week. So we're going to get into some different stuff this week. We got to talk about SmackDown from last week. That happened after our last show, and we had returns on that. And we had a very big main event that a lot of people say stole the show and might have even stole the week. We're going to talk about its post-Mania season, and it's the time of year where new people get opportunities, breakouts can happen. So who are our breakout possible stars on the horizon? Because it's that time of year, and we're going to get into that. And then, God, we didn't get into WWE buying AAA last week, so we're going to talk about that. And who knows what else, folks. The next hour, get ready. We're here. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt, Big Gold Belt. All I really want is that Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really need that Big Gold Belt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast, Season 5, Episode 13, brought to you by Big Gold Belt Media. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Should be a fun hour as we get into all kinds of wrestling talk here. I got the boys with me, Silly Celis to my left, and Giant Crab to my right. Guys, how is it going this week?
Doing good.
Actually, it's bittersweet. I just learned that Six Flags is going to close this year.
Uh-oh. Are we talking one in our area?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's happening. I had a feeling it might be happening.
Yeah, November 2nd is the last day. So if you want to get stabbed at Six Flags, this is the last year that you'll be able to do it out there in beautiful Largo, Maryland.
Breaking news for the local DC folks. And see, I'm old enough to go back to when it was Wild World.
Oh, the kids don't know about Wild World.
Yeah, the Wild World was a whole different beast, but it did have a wrestling tie-in because the Wild One roller coaster was advertised by Big John Studd himself. So wrestling ties into everything in one way or another. But there you go, breaking news: Six Flags. Oh, that's what Six Flags America, right?
Yes.
Is that the local one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Six Flags America will be no more. Oh my! There you go. So let's see here. Last week was a packed show. We talked a lot about WrestleMania last week because it was our post-WrestleMania show. We had a lot to get into. We talked about Raw after Mania, but being we record on Thursdays, SmackDown hadn't happened yet. And we talked about how there was probably going to be a very newsworthy SmackDown happening because there was rumors of returns. There was talk about a TLC main event. And lo and behold, SmackDown came on last Friday, and for a 3-hour SmackDown, which usually kind of drags, it's usually kind of a slog. It was definitely, I thought, one of the better shows they've done in a damn long time. And I guess the two big tentpole, actually, there might be three tentpole things on it. We opened with a John Cena and Randy Orton conversation where they pulled back and forth, and Orton had a hell of a damn promo on there, kind of getting into the whole, history of him and John Cena and all that feud and all the years of, going back and forth for the title, and how, all right, we're going to do it one more time. We're going to do it in St. Louis at Backlash in 2 weeks. So stay tuned, folks. We'll talk about that one next week. But a hell of a segment with Cena and Orton kind of setting the table for their whole deal. From there, in the middle of the show, we had rumors of it happening, but lo and behold, it did. Aleister Black makes his return, takes the Miz's head off with that spinning kick he is known for, and I think the big thing we talked about last week was I thought that whole return was going to be hinging on one thing as far as how people were going to receive it. And yes, he returned with the music. He had the same music, the same entrance, same everything, same Aleister Black returning from AEW, and he's back in WWE. And then to close the show, TLC. So we had the Street Profits defending the World Tag titles against the Motor City Machine Guns, and help me out here, Celis. Who was the third team in that? Oh, Gargano and Ciampa. That was the lineup. And we had no commercials. It went about 18 minutes, and a lot of people coming off of that match said, goddamn, why was that not on the WrestleMania card? It might have stole the entire damn show. They definitely had a pay-per-view worthy TLC match on SmackDown to close the show, and the Street Profits reigned.
Yep.
Love it. All for that. So, Sellers, I will go to you first. The SmackDown that puts a bow on everything WrestleMania week. Hell of a show, in my opinion. What do you think?
I definitely agree with you. And the three things that you highlight the bookends of the show. You had your opening, your midpoint, and the end of the show. And I'll just go into detail from my perspective of it. I felt, and this is the word I'm gonna use for this show, and me and Jamal was talking about this before we went on air, talking about my work. Nostalgia. Nostalgia was a big aspect of the show because when you had John Cena and Randy Orton, that was probably one of the more classic ruthless aggression era promos or storyline bookings towards a pay-per-view where I felt like I was looking at them two looking back about 15 years ago. And I'm talking about the evolution area of Randy Orton versus, the maybe the thugonomics of John Cena, but just now grown up. So it was very nostalgia for me just seeing that aspect. And I thought it was very well done where it was the classic of you build up to your B-level pay-per-view. You already know who's probably going to win, but you have to book it where it seems that Randy may have an opportunity to win that at Backlash. But once again, more on that later. Then the Aleister Black return, which I felt was very impactful because for a Texas crowd, which is not a WrestleMania crowd, you're not in Vegas anymore, the reception was very well welcome, where I hope WWE capitalizes on a mistake they did with him the first time. He was one of the best in-ring performers and had one of the best entrances and just themes of a character through NXT that when he got brought up on the main roster, they dropped the ball with him because I don't think they knew what to do with him. But once again, that was a different era during that time where Triple H was actually over NXT versus the main roster. And then going to the end, once again, going back to nostalgia. So WrestleMania 7, right, is when we had the triple threat where you had the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys. This was a nostalgia moment for this generation. So for our generation, it was that WrestleMania 17 moment of that ladder match. For those that are about the teens and early 20s, this is your moment that you have with that type of ladder match that can happen with a tag team match. Unfortunately, it was not on WrestleMania, which it should have been, but it was something that it was capitalized because one, it was commercial free, and you felt the authenticity that was there where they want to make sure they make their moments of how to be successful of a tag teams. And I thought every team did well. Every team had their spots. And I think they got the right decision going over. Now, where do you go with this? How do you build your tag team to make sure it's not just put on the barn burner, but how do you make sure these moments then happen on future pay-per-views?
Okay. I'm going to get Cupcake in here really quick because our regular viewer, Cupcake, so good to see you as always. Randy Orton has the best thighs in WWE. A sentiment I have absolutely heard before online, so I will leave that all to you. Thank you for being with us here, Cupcake.
That's a weird way to spell Liv Morgan, but okay.
To each their own. To each their own. Always good to see you here, Cupcake, on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. I'm going to ask you this, Jamal. With Aleister Black returning, how do you think this goes for him? Because Lord knows that where he has been, it didn't pan out into a whole heck of a lot other than getting a stable and kind of being in that middle of the card area. He's been gone a long time. He's back. They brought him back against The Miz. So right after that's like, okay, The Miz. So I don't know. What are you thinking about Aleister Black back in WWE?
Well, I guess the question is for me, what does he want? Because when he was in WWE, and it was like, well, I'm a better than average player. I should be elevated. I should be up there. I should be in the spotlight. Okay, cool. Goes to AEW, has a stable, leads a team. Definitely responsible for getting a couple of his guys over. I mean, would there be a Brody King in AEW without him? Buddy Matthews is going to come, and he was already going to be a guy. But would Julia Hart be who she is, without him? And so he's definitely involved in that. And then somehow that wasn't good enough, and now he goes back to WWE. Sure, it's a not to use your name, but it's a cupcake feud versus The Miz.
It's a layup.
Yeah. And, in the same way that Alexander Rusev was brought back, just kind of throwing people around. Oh, God, what's Rusev going to do next? And it's just kind of like, well, what do you want out of it? and obviously time has passed, and of course, if time has passed and everybody's older, does he? And also, to be fair, the WWE that he left is not the same WWE that he has now.
Yep.
They don't do house shows anymore. They're not working 350 days a year. The pay-per-view schedule is a lot more lenient. Everything's a lot more lenient about the schedule. It's nothing but TV time, so the money's more consistent. And do you, so and then of course he gets to party with his wife. So maybe now that WWE is in a different spot, this is just better for him. Maybe they gave him exactly what he wanted, and in the same way that AEW got him what he wanted, but the difference is he gets to do it with his wife. Mm-hmm. So as far as storylines and where he can go and stuff like that, nobody's going to question Aleister Black's wrestling talent. Nobody's going to question his ability to be a leader. Nobody's going to question him to be his ability to be a champion. The question is he happy? Because that's the thing that translates to TV the most. People know when you're faking it. And then, of course, the dirt sheets are going to blow it out of proportion, too. So I would rather him just go there, whatever he wants, whatever it is that he needs to do, just go ahead and do that. And then let that be what it's going to be. Pay your mortgage, pay your taxes, and I'm good with it. But but going there and just being unhappy and seeing that, well, I'm only here so I don't get fined, type of an attitude is more important than just the storyline. Because if somebody were to say that Aleister Black is in the championship picture for any title, who would actually balk against that? Yeah, I mean, like if he's in the world title conversation with Seth, Roman, Cena, and Cody, and everybody else at the very tippity top, I have no problem with that. So whatever he wants to do, wherever he wants to go is fine. I just hope he's happy with it, because that translates, more than the program will.
Yeah, no, I think I think that is probably the best way to put it, because Lord knows we've heard the stories when he was down in Jacksonville that he was one of the guys looking to get out of there, wasn't happy to be there, and was chomping at the bit to leave. So it's like, okay, you got your wish. Now you're here. You're going to start off with The Miz, and I think that's probably a perfect reintroduction to be like, okay, here you go. Put you back in the mix, get you established, and then from there, we'll see what they do. Maybe it gets in the U.S. title picture there on SmackDown. I mean, there's a lot of different options for what they could do. So, I don't know. You think he had the stable, the House of Black over in AEW. You think any chance of a stable for him, maybe?
Not really.
I don't think so. And I think what Raw is doing on the other side, what they're alluding to, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit later about future breakout stars, but what they're doing with that potential stable on the Raw side, I don't think you want to copycat that on the SmackDown side. I really think you want to build him up as an individual mid-card first, face or heel, whichever way you can do that with him. You can see it on both sides. Yeah. But I think you really need to build that mid-tier star that after this whole Cena saga ends, then you're going to need your next level of superstars who's going to take over for this next generation.
There you go. All right. Yeah, no, I agree. There's too much stable stuff going on right now. So that would just muddy the waters trying to launch and establish another one. So yeah, have him do his solo thing and be kicking people's heads off and go from there. Especially if we're going to end up with like the Wyatts possibly on SmackDown, which seems to be the rumor. That would be a little bit too much of the similar spooky stuff on the same show. Yes. So yeah, let's go with that. Any other thoughts on SmackDown? I'm good with what I've said.
One thing I will just say for Zelina Vega, I know she won the U.S. title. Chelsea Green had a good run in a way, because you did put a belt on her because she had one of the best character developments that she had all of 2024 building into now. I just hope that with this mid-card women's title, it doesn't get left on the road, left under the rug, and that's on both shows. I really think Zelina has talent enough to at least voice over, get some convincing promos, have some people challenge her to see how you can build up some heels, maybe on the mid-card title. But I just don't want it to be left. But just congrats to her.
All right, let's switch gears to the post-Mania season. And as we came on the air, Crab asked a really good question. He mentioned about hey, have they said anything about a draft? And right away, I was like, no, they have not said anything about a draft. And it reminded me that, coming off of the the Netflix debut, they had that whole open season deal where they were clearly putting people in position for how they want things to be with Netflix. And I'm thinking that was so recent. That's why we're not hearing anything about a draft right now. But you never know. Post-Mania season, it does tend to happen. But this is the time of year where we usually start seeing new people get opportunities, new players in the mix, new people getting pushed up the card, people kind of getting their sink or swim moment in the post-Mania season. So maybe what we do, we would go around and do a who we think might be some breakout stars for the post-Mania season as we head out of spring, go into summer. This is when they like to experiment. So Celis, I'm going to go to you first. Let's do men and women. And I'm not really worried about, roster or whatever. So however you want to do it. But let's start with you. Who are you thinking might have some opportunity in front of them?
So I'm gonna start with the women's side. As somebody I think that is very prevalent of what she's doing as a newly become heel. I think Naomi has a way to transcend of skyrocketing her to a new level of her character. Once again, she is a former world champion. She has been a face for a long time in her career, but now transcending her to a heel phase can be very similar to what it was for Roman Reigns in the men's side if it's done correctly. And she doesn't need a mouthpiece. I really think they can skyrocket her to do what she needs to do because you need more dominant heels that are fresh, that is like, okay, this person I can feel like if where faces are chasing her if she becomes a champion, or when you think about somebody that can hold that money in the bank briefcase for a long time, just building up with stories. But on the men's side, I'm gonna go with somebody different that we haven't seen on TV in a while. And I'm gonna go back to when I referenced the Paul Heyman stable-ish that is coming up with, with Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker.
Right,
And when
right.
I'm looking at that stable, I'm looking at it a lot, and I mentioned it before about evolution. So in my opinion, you have Braun Breaker that's very similar to Batista and what that could do for him. I see Seth Rollins, maybe it's a Triple H because that's somebody that is legitimate. Let's say your mouthpiece is your Ric Flair, but who is your Randy Orton type that's a young superstar that may build up prevalent and be the first champion out of that stable if they're all together? And I'm going Austin Theory. And I think this is somebody that if he's brought into that stable, using Paul Heyman as a mouthpiece and using them together to build up a young superstar like Randy Orton does with Evolution, I think this could be a reset for him because, of course, this was Vince's guy. He was a Money in the Bank winner, and this was somebody that Vince was trying to push in a different way. But I think if Triple H gets a mold on him to rebrand him in a way, which he kind of was with, with the tag team that we was in, and kind of reestablished himself in a little bit. I think if you rebrand him as a potential young superstar that can propel him to the moon and be great, I think Austin Theory secretly has a way that you can skyrocket him to push him up to one of the top talents you have on the Raw side. And that will be somebody good to go against Jey Uso for that belt.
Austin Theory, former Money in the Bank winner. I think you're right about that idea. It would have to be like a complete reset for him.
Yes.
He's been kind of doing. He had the Money in the Bank opportunity that didn't go anywhere, didn't pan out. They've had him doing the tag team with Grayson Waller, and he very much strikes me as a guy that he needs to be tore completely down and rebuilt from the ground up. And it's not like there's no snap your fingers quick way to fix it.
No,
he's a long-term project.
Yep.
You might have something there. All right, let me go over to Giant Crab.
Yep.
Now, I don't think this has to be, who we think's going to get it. It can also be who we want to get, who should be getting it, who we think should get it. So, I don't know. We kind of want to have it open here as far as and NXT can be in this mix too. So, just who's due for some opportunity here.
So I have an answer to that, but I want to go back to something that Sella said that was interesting in that Heyman, Rollins, Breaker in this kind of evolution-esque group. And now the first question to that is, do they need more people? And the second question to make it a fully well-rounded stable, the second question to that is, it comes off the back of what Nick Nemeth says, Dolph Ziggler. To those that don't know, he was on Busted Open Radio, and he says, and I quote, "It doesn't feel natural. Maybe because it isn't. Maybe because it also is. I've seen these things before. I've known that it was just like, hey, we're going to throw you and Bobby Roode together because you guys know how to wrestle. This is a slow burn into a team. hopefully you got to give us some time. And even still, when you get to the main event later, when Breaker is continuously breaking them in half, you don't have that emotional investment yet. And he goes on from there. It's an interesting comment when you say that like this is an evolution like thing, and nobody ever questioned the authenticity of evolution. And then for Ziggler to come out and say Rollins and Breaker don't feel natural, and I didn't really think of it that way, but they're kind of opposites.
Yep.
Especially if Breaker is just not going to be the big heavy that isn't just going to stand there and look menacing. So now the Breaker is on an equal footing to somebody that's a polar opposite character of him. Who do they round out the stable with so that we just don't have this weird odd couple? And I don't know who that would be, who they need yet. So just something interesting to think about. The direct answer to your question, the only person that I'm very interested in right now is Bayley. At that point,
okay,
where you just don't know where she's going to go. She's done an NXT thing. She's obviously been in the main roster, left out of WrestleMania, and stuff like that. And you would think that this is like, okay, well, we're going to leave you out of WrestleMania for whatever reason, but we're going to give you a hell of a push and a hell of a run come SummerSlam and Survivor Series, something like that. Maybe that's the case. But then again, if WrestleMania goes well and the stories are the stories and they continue with that, then where do they leave her? And I feel that between Becky coming back and Charlotte coming back, Bayley's always been, to me, a bit of the underdog, the bit of the one that's kind of been left behind, even when you throw Sasha Banks into that conversation. So now what do? Does she become the next daddy? Or does she actually, say, screw it, and she just goes bananas and on the women's division and makes it all the way to the top of Raw, SmackDown in some way, shape, or form? I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what her next move is, and that's an interesting, prospect. So I know the spirit of the question is like, well, what young star is going to get there? They're trying on, who's going to be that NXT, call up that, I'm biased. It's Jordan Grace. Why wouldn't it be anybody else? It's Roxanne Perez. Why wouldn't it be anybody else but Roxanne Perez? She's damn ready. Give her the ball and let her run. But realistically, because the women's division is getting a bit top heavy, where does that leave Bayley? And I don't know.
Yeah, being she didn't have her spot on Mania, hasn't been seen since in the week afterwards. So it's definitely interesting where Bayley is going to fit in. And there's kind of a ready-made story here for her to return and be like, hey, y'all forgot about me. Let's not forget about Bayley. So,
but let me ask this. Speaking of that, though, I don't mean to cut you off. Did y'all see her interview with Chris Van Fleet?
I think I saw some clips of it or something.
So when I saw clips of it, speaking of when her facial reaction, when she talked about, how Mania was coming, of course it was recorded before Mania was, she kind of even alluded to like a little bit of an eye roll or attitude, like, hey, we'll see what's going to happen in a couple of days, and then boom, she gets written off TV. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to add to that about, okay, if you do this and she maybe has an attitude, she has like, all right, don't forget about me. I'm part of the 4 horsewomen too,
Yeah.
But go ahead. What you was about to say, so I didn't want to cut that off.
Well, Cupcake's thrown in. Bayley is middle of the road. Maybe she should retire. I don't think she needs to retire yet. But I like the idea of having some resentment to fuel her in kind of a new direction where it's like, oh, y'all forgot about me. Y'all pushed me to the side for WrestleMania, and use that to have her come back with an attitude. Not necessarily like a heel. We had the heel run for so long, but just Bayley comes back with a new spark, with a new coat of paint, with a new, a new something about new fire to her. To kind of liven her up.
Or, and I don't know when her contract ends, or maybe she just sits on the shelf and collects a check. And then she shows up in AEW in 6 months or 9 months or whatever that time period looks like. Yeah, because to the point of what Cupcake said.
Go ahead.
No, what's to the point of what Cupcake's saying, not that she needs to retire, it really is more to the point of what else is there left for her to do?
Yeah.
The options are getting smaller. When people were speculating about this around Mania when she got left off the show. There was rumors going around that she's got like about a year left on her deal or something, maybe a little more than a year. So definitely, it's not like she's out in like 3-4 months or something, or out this summer. So I don't know. Bailey's an interesting one. I purposely had y'all go first so I could like look at the rosters and kind of be like, who are we looking at here? Because there's there's so many people that are hurt right now. Like this was gonna be like, for me, this is gonna be the Bronson Reed time. This is gonna be like, all these guys that they were really heating up in the fall that like aren't around right now, or like Ilya Dragunov, what he was gonna be doing, and he's out too, injured. But one guy that jumps out at me that was definitely kind of getting a spot before Mania, I hope gets to take that next step now. Ludwig Kaiser, post the whole Imperium deal, Gunther doing his own thing. I want to see him doing his own thing and get that next step. Get that next step into like his own identity that isn't linked to, Imperium and all this. And I want to see some growth there. That's what I want to see for him, is a new twist on things, something more to Ludwig Kaiser where he's still not just so associated with Gunther and Imperium, because he's ready. He's got the moves. They can plug him in wherever. So let's see something for Ludwig Kaiser. And I'll throw this one in there too, because Celis, you mentioned him all the time. And hell, he's our Andre the Giant Battle Royal winner this year. I mean, come on. What's up with Carmelo Hayes? It's time to do something with him. And that Battle Royal win should be the spark to get him doing something this summer, to get him back in the mix.
And I think it will be, because when you think about this Miz versus Aleister Black now, once again, Miz was on the show, but you saw Carmelo Hayes on last week's SmackDown. And I was wondering why. And I think this could be something that, as he's coordinating with the Miz, I think if you have a screwy finish or whatever you do at SmackDown this week, because they're scheduled to wrestle Aleister Black versus the Miz, you have a screwy finish where that way Carmelo Hayes get himself involved. But you're going to hear these little things that Carmelo Hayes is doing here and there. And I really think he could be your men's Money in the Bank winner, because he is somebody that I think is ready-made to do something. But you just want to be careful that you don't miss an opportunity with this men's Money in the Bank, however you do it. But I think the Miz is somebody that could be great tutelage for helping him grow, just to make sure he's continuously to be over on the main roster where he has some type of reaction. I know it's been a while where it's like he's been on and he doesn't have any reaction, but he's good. He can go in the ring, but he needs to find that reaction. I think involving him, maybe with this Aleister Black thing or whatever they're going to do, I think this may be able to do it.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts from anyone, or are we going to our mid-show break?
Yeah, let's go to break.
All right. Let's do the mid-show break. When we come back, we'll get to the topic we couldn't get to last week. We'll talk about WWE buying Mexico's AAA and what that might mean for the future. And then from there, who knows? We got a whole half of the show to get through, folks. So lots more stuff coming. Stay with us. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back right after this.
Looking to get your brand in front of people who eat, sleep, and breathe entertainment? Big Gold Belt Media is the place to be. We're all about reporting on movies, TV shows, conventions, and everything in between. And we want your brand to be a part of the action. Partnering with us means your sponsorships get featured right in the midst of our content. Plus, we're going to hype you up on all of our social media, connecting you with an audience that loves discovering new things from trusted voices in entertainment. We're easy to find. Just look for us on Big Gold Belt on all your social media platforms. Don't wait, reach out today, and let's start building something amazing together. Your spotlight is waiting here at Big Gold Belt Media, biggoldbelt.com.
Thanks for being with us here tonight, folks, on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. So, before WrestleMania went on the air, there was kind of a very major story that broke during the pre-show, which is not really where you would expect a big major announcement to be made, but out of nowhere, it just happened. Everyone's kind of like, what? What's up with this? They brought out a whole bunch of luchadors. They brought out the Roldans, the family that owns AAA in Mexico, and announced that WWE has purchased AAA Lucha Libre. And very much out of nowhere, but I'm assuming this is a deal that clearly was going on for a long time. And we got it thrown out before WrestleMania. Not even after, not the press conference. just quick little announcement that yes, we're going to be doing that, and we have plans for a joint show with NXT and AAA wrestlers happening the weekend of Money in the Bank in the afternoon. They're going to have a Worlds Collide show, and then that's kind of the first thing on the docket, and we're going to go from there. Crab, I'm going to go to you first on this because there's a lot of angles and I guess ways we can come at this. For me, at least, when it first was announced, I was just kind of like, what? what are we doing here that we're suddenly not partnering with? They've straight up bought the place, but they're going to keep it separate and it's still going to be its own thing. But this isn't the, making a deal with like UK groups to tour people there and shit. It's very different deal. So I don't know. What was your initial reaction when this dropped out of nowhere that AAA and WWE are under the same umbrella? It's TKO even are under the same umbrella now.
So global localization. That was the phrase that Triple H used. And at first, we saw it when you had, we're just going to have NXT UK. And then that's going to do well. Then NXT India. And then that's going to do well. And then Japan. And then South Latin America. And then, Eastern Europe and so on and so forth. Well, that didn't work. So what did they do instead? They, started to work with a lot of, the indies. They started to work with a lot of, local groups around the world. They started to host more shows around the world, whether it's a pay-per-view in Australia or a more fluid, more consistent shows in Europe, going twice a year instead of once a year, or sending both shows before a pay-per-view, or sending both shows just because. Then you have the deals in Central and South America as well. And I think that this is surprising, obviously, but not surprising in that this is what WWE has been quietly doing for the last 18 months to 2 years. As far as the AAA itself, they're not CMLL. And that's kind of the thing. It's that, if you're talking about Lucha Libre, culturally relevant Mexican wrestling, you're talking about CMLL.
Right.
Full stop.
Traditional Lucha Libre.
Right. And if you're talking about Mexican wrestlers and some of them wear masks, then that could be anything. But it's probably AAA. So them going after AAA makes more sense than anything because of the fact that AAA has been, a more Americanized brand of wrestling. It's not KFC, it's El Pollo Campero. Okay, fine. As far as now the question is, what does this look like? They're having an NXT show and the AAA show in Inglewood. I think either both of them are there or one is at the Forum and the other one's at the Dome. Either way, WWE bought this thing, which means that they're going to put their spin on it. This isn't a cultural exchange. This is WWE moving into a market that they have, some ground and are making bigger ground. And I would say similarly to how the MLB has baseball has a partner league in Mexico, the LMB, and it's played mostly the same way. There's a lot of overlap. There is a lot of ex major league players that are playing down in Mexico, and they play for the Mexican series championship. Does that mean that the competition is just as good? Does that mean that it's the same experience as it is at Citi Field or in Chicago? No, it's literally Mexican, so it has to be some difference. The question is, what will be where will be lost in translation? Is where will that split lie? Is WWE trying to make a Mexican product more American?
Mm-hmm.
Or AAA trying to make an American product more Mexican? And it will be interesting to see, how that shakes out. And honestly, it's June 7th, so we got about a month to go before that happens.
Yeah,
hold on, real quick, but just a great idea of having it in Los Angeles, the biggest city in Mexico.
Right. Yeah, no, that was clearly a very calculated move where it's all right, we'll do our little joint experiment here to see how this goes. We'll do it in LA. Now, Celis, I'm going to throw this over to you,
Mhm.
since this is one of the big rumors that immediately started getting called upon, and Crab kind of alluded to it here with the whole global localization and the idea that WWE is purchasing this. This isn't a partnership, so to say, but straight up they are buying in and like taking the thing over. But they're still saying it's going to be separate. One of the things that immediately started getting kicked around was, well, does this just become NXT Mexico?
Mhm.
So, what do you think here? Because they're talking right now, they're still talking AAA branding. They're talking about a joint show with NXT. It's not like they're calling it, NXT is invaded by Lucha Stars of Mexico. They're saying AAA and NXT when worlds collide. But in the back of our heads, you think NXT Mexico is the end game here?
I hope not, because when we had NXT UK and a similar model, what this happened, it did not go as well, or you just had a lot of those NXT UK members end up coming into NXT and just part of WWE in general on the main roster. Now, do you give an opportunity when you're purchasing all these different promotions and things of that nature to come in under your umbrella? Great, that is business that you do, and you're trying to monopolize the competition. However, there's only so many days in a week. There's only so many providers or where you can show your showcases on. It's going to be enough time where it's like, all right, when am I going to get a break from this thing because it's too much on and I don't know what to watch. And if you get fatigue of putting the NXT Mexico or NXT America, things of that nature, somebody is going to lose out. And if somebody loses out, then you just have people just go back to different independent scenes and just says, okay, I'll just go to my local bingo hall and do that because it's what fun is. And that's kind of the route that Cody Rhodes did. He had to rebuild himself through those independents, like make my own journey, and then let's see what I can bring back on a bigger pot of money. What I hope that you can do is now you just bring some more talent in to then maximize and maybe have a 3-hour NXT show where you just bring more competition to what you need to do so you can have all these wrestlers be showcased. But when you have things on Tubi, when you have things on Peacock, when you have things on Netflix, it's going to get crowded very quick. And once again, everybody won't be able to shine. So somebody's going to lose out. So are you going to actually lose more than win with this? And I hope it doesn't become an NXT Mexico.
Do you think we get a AAA show in the United States on like a Telemundo or a Univision? You think that might be like their goal, maybe?
Well, yeah, but
okay,
who's this for? But that's the question, Marcelo. So who is this for?
Great question.
Is this for the Mexican audience, or is this for the American audience, or is this just a Netflix thing? And if anybody wants to watch, they can watch. And I think that's going to be indicative of what the show looks like.
Yep.
Yeah, but go ahead, Mike. You were saying?
I was going to say, I think, in my honest opinion, you know how you talk about the WrestleMania weekend, right? And you have the NXT that comes before the Saturday WrestleMania show, then you got the Sunday WrestleMania show.
Yeah.
This will be good if it's like a Friday afternoon live show. Okay, now we're going to represent Lucha Libre as one type of wrestling that we're going to do, where you had people from WWE, people from NXT that have that similar style that could be on this type show just to represent what Lucha Libre is for AAA. And I think that would be a great aspect where, once again, you're adding another show, but a Friday afternoon show before, your SmackDown on that Friday night, I think that would just add to the value of different type of shows you put over the weekend, which I think will be a great Super Bowl for them, if that makes sense.
Well, that comes back to the question: who is this for? Because I agree with you. There's a lot of WWE product that's already out there because there's still WWE Speed, on Twitter, and then there's all the shows and the various times, stuff like that. So they've streamlined things, but they've also put out more content to reach more places at once. You talk about distribution and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Again, if this is for a Mexican audience, most of Mexico is in the Central Time Zone. So if that's the case, does this thing air at 9 o'clock Eastern, which would be 8 in Mexico City? Mexico City is the biggest market. 20 million people live in that city alone. There's like 150 million Mexicans in the country. And then, of course, even though it is Mexico, is this thing broadcast in Spanish only? Down there, who's going to handle production? Will it be the Mexicans, or will it be with WWE influence, or will it be an American product that the American team sent down from Connecticut? And then, of course, the matches itself, you don't really need commentary for that. But what does that how does that factor into the presentation? So, I know I've kind of gone back to the well, a few times saying like, who is this really for? But that's like the big question.
That is the main question. It really is.
And then, of course, more importantly than all of that is authenticity. If this is a Mexican show for a Mexican audience, how can they maintain authenticity? Now, of course, if this is a Mexican show at for a Mexican audience, what does that mean exactly? Will they make this a more, generic Spanish cultural, a show? I don't know exactly what that looks like. Hi, American, don't speak Spanish, don't know what it looks like. But could this be the flagship show for that market? Because that market is bigger than Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, all of South America, but Brazil, all of Central America except Belize. So that's a lot of people that speak Spanish down there, and Spain, and portions of Africa. So there's a lot of people that speak Spanish out there. They just happen to be south of Texas. And then, of course, there are other large Spanish-speaking enclaves within the U.S., here, New York, all of California, all of Texas, Florida, and Arizona. But now the question is this going to be Mexican anymore, or is this going to be Latin?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Lucha Libre may be a specific thing, but AAA is not the WWC out of Puerto Rico. Those shows are
very different companies.
Those are very different shows. So anybody that knows what the Cologne Boys are doing, that's not AAA, and you can't conflate the two. So then I wonder if that's the kind of the long-term goal for WWE, to make this a more Latin show and kind of have this be not the A show, B show, C show. No, this is a totally different division.
Uh-huh.
And if that means that we can get us somebody across the border from NXT or Raw or SmackDown, shit, send Bailey to Mexico City. Send Bailey to Tijuana. Seeing Kiana James, Celis' favorite talent, down there in Monterey. We don't know what that looks like, but it does make it easier. We don't have to worry about negotiating a deal between two companies. Hey, you're not really doing anything. We don't do house shows anymore. You want to spend 6 weeks in Chile? We got a program for you.
Yeah. One of the theories I heard going around was that probably the best case scenario a lot of people were envisioning was that AAA still exists as its own thing in Mexico, run by them, by the Roldans and everything. And it's WWE essentially bankrolling it with more money, with fresh cash and all this. And then on top of that, being like, okay, we'll help you out with production. We'll increase the aesthetics and all this. And then when you run a big show, oh, here's Rey Mysterio. Here's Pentagon. Here's Phoenix. We can send down people to round out the card. And then on the backside, okay, obviously we're getting first dibs on people you're developing down there. You're a pipeline to bring them right up here into our stuff on this side of the border and kind of have it be like a two-way street thing. But to me, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great on paper. That sounds great on paper, and sounds like, yeah, that would be an awesome way to do it. But just knowing the history of how this company operates, and it's like, yeah, how'd that WCW purchase go? It's like, once they decide they don't like something, things change very quickly.
100%.
Now, Lord knows that is how the old man would do things. And we're not necessarily doing things the old man, but still, it's the MO of how that company's history of operation is when something gets engulfed by them.
But to be fair to the current regime, we've already seen something different. Mm-hmm. They are, yes, even though the show is Los Angeles, their first show under the umbrella is not in Mexico, it's in Los Angeles.
Right.
This is very different than NXT UK. They tried to run a UK show out of Florida. Didn't work.
Right, yeah.
And then, of course, they tried to recreate the spontaneity and magic of the indies by galvanizing the indies and make corporate indies within and restructuring the UK scene. So you had the way they came through with a flamethrower to the rest of the stuff that they didn't buy and scooping up the talent that they wanted, galvanizing the indie scene in the UK and Germany and France. They left a lot of animosity in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So not only can I not watch who I want to watch because Raw comes on at 1 a.m, I don't want to watch them anyway because y'all came through and Walmarted us by just coming through with all of your money and taking everything that we have. So fuck it. I don't want that anyway. This isn't that. There's a co-show. And then, of course, which makes it a big deal for those in Los Angeles. And then NXT is the same night later on. Makes it a big deal for NXT. Obviously, they're not trying to compete with Raw and SmackDown, but they definitely want eyes on the product. So if you're going to be flying to Los Angeles for NXT, oh yeah, the Mexicans are in town. Might want to check that out too. And then, of course, there's a bunch of AAA and WWE loyalists that are down for the cause regardless. It's a big splash. It's a big splash for both brands, NXT and AAA. But then the question is, that's the first impression. I think the second impression is the most important because you already have our attention. What are you going to do to keep it?
Yep.
Yeah. When people get their first taste, you got to hook them in some way to make this like, okay, like we've said a lot, there is no shortage of wrestling out there these days. And to add more to it, you got to have something unique. You got to have something different to hook people's attention because there's never been more good wrestling available at your damn fingertips for like, minimal effort. So AAA, WWE, NXT, Lucha Libre hybrid thing. It needs some kind of hook. It needs something different to make it stand out. And that's probably the biggest thing they got to figure out over the next month is what is that going to be to make it different?
Right. And the thing is, now this is a question, of course. Let's say it goes well. And it is what it is. How do you not rob Peter to pay Paul and send everybody to NXT? Because if you have $1 million talent making $1 million pesos, well, $1 million pesos ain't $1 million. Let's get them into Orlando. Let's get them to the main roster. What do you do with that? And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that develops as well. I mean, long shot. Does AAA have representation in Survivor Series?
I wouldn't count on it at this point, but
I mean, right. I mean, it's a bit
anything can
early.
happen between now and November.
But that's kind of the thing. Like, how do we? I mean, they literally could.
Do we start getting on random shows like a AAA match, like on the undercard, where it's like a specific match, AAA wrestler versus AAA wrestler with whatever that style of presentation is going to be? It's kind of like a thing.
And more importantly, if it is a Mexican show for the Mexicans, well, how do you Americanize it without losing that that authenticity?
Yeah.
Right, because it doesn't matter where it is. A show anywhere else but America is not an American show. So there's going to be some kind of curve to it. And then there's, of course, the traditions that are steeped in Lucha Libre wrestling in general are what they are, and they're very not American. So these are going to be the things that it's going to be very interesting to see. And then, of course, there's El Grande Americano.
He's got to be part of it.
He's got to be part of it.
He's got to make a trip down there.
That's why he went to his sabbatical to try to learn the Lucha Libre style, right?
I mean, he could turn out to be the Kerwin White of AAA, and this is, I don't know. That could be interesting. But I mean, okay. But this is the question. Obviously, it's a surprise, but do we like it?
I'm intrigued. I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, mainly just because it's a new company, it's a new regime. It's not the old. If it was the old regime, I'd be like, oh my god, they're just gonna swallow this thing up, and that's done with that.
Exactly.
This version, it's like, hey, this is TKO, this is Triple H. The hell, they're working with TNA in a very much equal partnership. Where it's like, okay, they got people on both shows. There's clear going back and forth. So, given how things have gone with TNA, it makes me curious to see how this is going to go. But like you said, that show in June, that co-branded show with NXT, that is going to be very much the litmus test of if there's reason to buy in here or not. Because I think the biggest thing is if this thing comes on and all the luchadors are essentially being like reworked and made to like wrestle like WWE wrestlers, this ain't going to work. It's got to look and feel different. It's got to be its own thing. It can't just be these wrestlers have masks. They look like they're like Pentagon and Phoenix and all just doing the same old stuff. It's got to look like lucha libre, like you're saying. It's got to have that authenticity for it to stand out as something different.
Right. But that's also relevant to the roster too, because not every luchador is Rey Mysterio or Psicosis or La Parca. You know, they vary in size and shape and ability as well, much like everybody else. And if I don't see no micro wrestlers on the show, then what are we even talking about? If we don't have a WLC match,
right?
Yeah, but that's a different conversation. But yes, obviously keeping the authenticity. You know, the show itself in Los Angeles, that's going to be the biggest thing. Going forward after that, it's going to be interesting to watch. But that's the part that makes me the most afraid. If it does work, then they have the blueprint to take over the world.
Oh, absolutely. The next stop's Japan. Then they'll go South America. Absolutely.
Right. So what's to stop them from buying All Japan or Noah or something like that, and then say like, oh no, we're not infringing on anything, but Taka Michinoku is going to be the president of whatever.
Our satellite office in Japan is Pro Wrestling Noah.
Right. And you know, or doing that in other untapped markets where they just don't have the resources to put a thing on in a major and meaningful way, including but not limited to the Middle East, India, and Western Africa. I can definitely see them following the same blueprint, buying a mid-major indie company and then putting their WWE spin on it. And because it's Netflix or whatever the distribution partner is, everything is kind of just like cookie cut. You want a show? Netflix has infinite room. You know, give us an hour. Give us an hour and give us 3 cameras, and we got you good.
Right.
And I think that's a thing, because it's not because I don't want to see other prospects succeed. It's because I don't want WWE to be the juggernaut behind them.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, in Mexico,
one flavor in town. You know.
Right, because even though there are many different flavors, they're all from the same company, and that company has, you know, a trend, a palette that they're not going to stray too far away from. You know, and that's with anything. I saw Thunderbolts tonight, and it is a Marvel movie. And if you say that it's a Marvel movie, that's going to set a certain level of expectations. Whether it's better or worse than anything else doesn't matter, but you know that you're going to come into a specific range because it's a Marvel movie. It is what it is. Would I like to have had that same story done by an independent director or a company or a Japanese or whoever? Well, sure. But it's a Marvel movie. Yeah, cool. And I really just hope that doesn't become, you know, what it is, as far as their very slow but methodical plans for world domination.
Yeah, we'll put a button on this with Cupcake says, my husband and I love La Parca. Everybody loved
Who
La
doesn't
Parca.
love La Parca?
Everyone loved La Parca. The crazy part of this might be that we may end up seeing La Parca on a WWE branded show, since La Parca is very much part of AAA. So we will see. We count down to June. If La Parca shows up on that show, I will be very excited. We got about 6 minutes left. Do we want to talk about this darn Bischoff and Hogan thing, or talk about something else?
I mean,
we don't have to talk about it.
We can do that very quickly. You know, just in case you don't know, that Bischoff and Hulk Hogan, for some reason, are putting their money together to come up with a freestyle amateur wrestling league. Think Ultimate Fighter, but with like college freestyle wrestling. And that's going to be a show over the course of weeks, in a game show like format. The question, of course, it becomes, it's Bischoff and Hogan, so we're interested, but then it's Bischoff and Hogan, so we don't care. And I think that the audience that they're trying to reach is like, that's where it is. You're either going to watch it or you're never going to see it again. But it's not. The thing that they're known for, professional wrestling, is not amateur freestyle wrestling. So they're going to have to come up with a way to make that not necessarily more sporting, because it is a sport, but give it that thing that WWE or pro wrestling has.
Production value.
Yeah,
Yes.
the production value.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's a good luck to him, but yeah, sure.
There's a long history of trying to make amateur wrestling into a TV property, and it's never taken off before. And I think the biggest problem becomes because the hardcore amateur wrestling folks don't have any interest in that, because they just want to see their college meets or Olympic level stuff when they happen here and
The
there.
infrastructure's already there.
Right. The folks that are hardcore into that, they can already get that, and they're already invested. And when outsiders like this come in and get involved, they don't want that. They don't want to see it tainted and turned into something else. And it just kind of is what it is. It's Lord knows it's been tried before many a times.
Yeah, I mean, like, not everything needs fireworks and pomp and circumstance. Some things are just like tennis. You don't need pyro at a tennis match. It's tennis. It's a very reserved
It'd be
sport.
entertaining though.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be entertaining, but I'm also saying that's not going to make the tennis better. We're there for the sport, not for the pomp.
Right quick, Mad Chocolate Gaming jumping in, apparently waiting for the post-credit scene during the new Marvel movie, is checking out the show while they're waiting for the post-credits, which is sure to be more entertaining than Hogan and Company's new venture.
That's funny.
I'll be seeing Thunderbolts on Sunday.
Same Sunday. That's my plan on Sunday.
There's a mid-credits and a post-credit scene, so you'll definitely want to stick around for both. So stay to the very end.
Cool.
All right, sit tight, Mad Chocolate Gaming. You'll get them soon enough.
Yeah.
Well,
So the other thing that I saw that was interesting was Bryan Danielson named his top 4 wrestlers he would build a company around.
Okay.
Now, of course, people like to name their Mount Rushmore. This is not that. This is who would he start a company with? Now, the first question is, who do you think he said? And I'll just throw it out there. They're all AEW guys, current AEW guys.
Okay. So it's only AEW.
Yeah, well, he just happened to name current
Adam
AEW
Cole?
guys. So
Adam Cole.
no.
Oh, it wasn't one.
I'll go the other Adam Copeland, formerly Edge.
Big Cope? No. And actually, his WWE's trademark expires in April.
Oh, okay.
So so who knows how long he's going to be Cope? But no.
What about your favorite John Moxley?
Made the list somehow.
Okay.
So yeah,
3 more.
Yeah, 3 more, and the 3 more are William Ospreay, Swervington Strickland, Kenneth Omega, and Jonathan Moxley. Ospreay, Strickland, Moxley, and Omega. He says that he would build those 4 companies around. He would build his company around those 4 people. That is interesting.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's interesting because they're so unlike him as a wrestler.
Yeah. Very different people.
Right. And, and again, all 4, well, 3 out of the 4 are very talented. And the other one is John Moxley. But, hey, people like Moxley. People have liked Moxley for fucking 25 years. I am not one of those people, but it would be ignorant of me to say that they don't. So whatever moves tickets. But now the next question is, who would you pick as your 4 to build a company around? And let's just say that whoever you pick, dead or alive, in their prime.
Okay.
So who would you guys pick?
So
Now,
past, present, dead or alive. I don't care if you say Abraham Lincoln, he was a wrestling champion.
Okay.
We're expanding beyond AEW, or are we keeping it AEW like Brian?
Yeah, anybody, dead or alive.
Oh, jeez.
Who would you like in heaven right now? After the asteroid that's going to hit us in 2032 wipes us off the face of the earth, and there's nothing but TNA and cockroaches left. In heaven, who do you build your wrestling company around? Well, then I'll give you my 4 while y'all think.
Yeah. Okay, I got 3.
Okay,
I got 2 already. Go ahead. Go. Let's hear what you got.
Go ahead, your 4.
So my 4, and I'm going with wrestlers.
Okay.
Number 1 has got to be Mike Awesome. I am a huge mark from Mike Awesome. I think that he's one of the best big men I've ever seen. Top 5 wrestler for me all time, dead or alive.
Okay.
Second, Mitsuharu Misawa. a
You
smaller,
who must not be named.
a smaller Misawa. You know,
Right,
I'm
okay,
sorry,
okay.
but you know, until he was doing the Randy Orton gimmick of hearing voices in his head. He just a goddamn good wrestler. And of course, the fourth one, Jaguar Yokota. I think she's top 5 greatest women wrestlers of all time, like full stop. And even though, because my company, because of the style of wrestling that I like, would be based on work rate,
Mhm.
you know, 20-minute match. It would be more Ring of Honor like,
Yeah.
and less WWE like. So work rate, ring mat, you know, bell to bell matches, grappling, mat wrestling, that type of a thing. But Celis, you got your 4?
So mine will be The Rock, Chris Jericho, Mr. Kennedy.
Of course.
Gotta put him in
Okay.
there. I gotta put him in there.
Fair enough.
But I want to throw a woman in there, because I want to be fair to the woman. I'm going to say Ivory.
Okay, so
Ooh.
Ivory's super underrated, but just a very different show, because my show is going to be an hour long and 59-minute matches, and Celis' show is going to be an hour long with 45-minute segments.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
All right. I was looking around my room at different stuff here, trying to think like names that pop into my head, since we're being total sandbox here with live or dead or whatever. I'm gonna go Macho Man Randy Savage. As his, I always thought Macho Man was amazing, because Macho Man could be heel or face, and either damn side make it work amazingly.
Yeah.
You gotta have Macho Man in there. Steve Austin, whether he's Stone Cold or Stunning Steve, hell, you could have the whole damn gamut and have both over the course of a career, depending on how we're doing this thing. So Steve Austin. I will also throw in, who else we got around here? There was someone else I was just thinking of when I was looking around here. Looking at my walls of different like wrestling stuff in here. You did say Misawa. Misawa's right back there. I will say, let's get a lady in here. I like that y'all said Jaguar Hokuda, and then you mentioned Ivory, which is a heck of a pick. If we're doing all time, I want Jacqueline. I want Jacqueline in there, because Jacqueline would beat some damn ass. And Jacqueline, I always thought, in a different era, like Jacqueline in this day and age, but prime Jacqueline.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes.
That's the thing. It's like there's just so much more you could have done with that. And okay, to end it, to make it 4, I will do. We need a bad guy. Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man. Okay, all time, heel gimmick, bad guy gimmick. I don't know that off the top of my head. There, that is a project we could bring this back for a future episode.
Yeah.
We have more time to think about it.
Yeah,
like this little interesting little thought process there.
Yeah,
like I did it off the top of my head.
So Brian named in an interview, he named those 4 guys as who he would start a company with, and of course Ricochet says, "I knew he was an idiot." Which is, because granted, yes, we did name some of like the greatest talent to ever come out of anything ever.
We were playing the sandbox,
right? So there's that, but it is kind of like that's. I think that it's just an interesting thing of what we would start a wrestling company to be, and we all have very different answers for the same product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
none of them bad. Like solid. I would watch all 3 shows, but my show's best. But it is still to the point of that's just how very different and nuanced wrestling is and can be. And as it relates to WWE's global takeover, I hope we get a lot more nuance from them than the streamlined everything pipeline into the main roster.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
hopefully this AAA show will continue to differentiate themselves, and they're starting to do that. You have the show on Tubi. That is a thing. It is not your typical show. It is definitely a lot rougher, but that's not the point. The point is getting these kids the exposure that they need. And then of course you have the AAA show coming up in about a month, June 7th in Los Angeles. Getting America the exposure to AAA in a meaningful way. And not just 2 a.m. or Telemundo or whatever Spanish language channel you have in your town. It'll be interesting to see what happens. and more importantly, what Conan's involvement is, because good Lord.
Oh
that
yeah,
can be-
you know he's looking to get some
Yeah.
investment here
Exactly.
in this whole deal. All right,
Thank you.
folks, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for being with us here tonight for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. We are here each and every Thursday, streaming live 8 p.m. here on YouTube, on Twitch, over on X. All three of those platforms carrying the live stream as it airs Thursdays at 8 p.m. After that, the stream lives on YouTube. So if you're looking to watch later on, we do have the video stream going on YouTube after the fact. Back catalog is there, so you can always check things out after the fact. If you're looking for audio, it lives on also in podcast form. So the podcast version drops shortly thereafter on all your favorite podcast platforms. So we got you covered, video or audio, either way. On the social media, you can find us at Big Gold Belt across the board, whether it's Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, you name it, at Big Gold Belt is where you can find us. And last but not least, the website, biggoldbelt.com, the home of Big Gold Belt Media. Since we already mentioned it a bunch of times tonight, this is obviously Thunderbolts weekend. Tons of coverage of Thunderbolts on the site right now. Also on the social media platforms, lots of interview clips up with all the stars. So Big Gold Belt Media has been all over that. Our editor-in-chief, Dude James, has been on top of that. So if you're looking for Thunderbolt stuff, we got you covered. BigGoldBeltMedia.com is where you can find it. Now, seeing a lot of it on Instagram too. So,
Yeah.
like I said, at Big Gold Belt, you can find lots of stuff there. There's lots of coverage. Probably Thunderbolts weekend. Get in here. What you got to say?
One last thing, a movie that I'm not hearing enough people talk about is called The Surfer, with Nicolas Cage, and he is he's a guy that went back to his hometown to try to surf for the beach, and the locals don't take kindly to your city folk come around here, and because he's Nicolas Cage, he's insane, and it goes from there. But The Surfer might be something that you want to see in theaters if you don't want to get into the Thunderbolts madness. And then there are a couple of other things that are out, but those are the two more interesting ones that I've seen that I'm seeing this weekend.
All right, you got Thunderbolts, you got The Surfer, different options there for you folks from your friends here at Big Gold Belt Media. We will be back next Thursday. Hope you're right here with us. In the meantime, hit that button to subscribe and all that good stuff. Until then, we'll talk to you later. So stay cool as we get into the hotter months ahead. Watch some wrestling, watch some movies, and we will talk to you later.
All I really need, that big